Donald Trump came out and did a fascinating thing a couple of days ago. You can't call them tweets because it's always on his Truth Social platform. I don't know what are we supposed to call those things, truths? I don't even know what they are. But he let one loose the other day claiming that we were going to cap credit card interest at 10% nationwide for a year. Now, where the president thinks he gets this authority, I have no earthly idea.
He doesn't care. He gave up caring a long time ago where he gets the authority for anything. He just does.
Well, I remember after the first Trump administration, somebody did an analysis of how he spread the word about policy, and it was always by tweet. The guy called it policy by tweet. I wish I could remember who this was. I cannot at this point. And he said that President Trump seems to think that if he tweets something, that becomes U.S. policy. It doesn't. And, he also is of a mind that he can foist, is that the correct verb? Foist an executive order onto us anytime he wants about anything he wants. And that's not exactly right either. There are rules about executive orders that he doesn't really follow. So one wonders what would happen if he tweeted this and then turned around and put it together in an executive order, and then all the credit card companies told him to go pound sand.
Right.
Which is what I would do were I at the helm of a credit card company, because I'm not sure he could make a coherent case for how he has the authority to demand this. So we're going to, I think, for purposes today, sort of put that off to the side. Well, can he do this? I don't think so. Maybe you've got something to add.
I agree with you putting it off to the side, but maybe with a footnote, and that is he may not have the authority to do this, but credit card companies, well, the financial industry as a whole is highly regulated in this country. And some of those regulatory bodies fall under the executive branch. And so if he could the case, make life uncomfortable for them.
Well, look, if the regulation falls conclusively underneath the auspices of the executive branch, then he can make a lot of mischief by executive order, because that's what executive orders do, right? They don't give us the law for the entire country. They take what the executive branch is permitted to do and defines it.
Right.
So, all right, maybe. But my
point is, he could make enough trouble through legitimate channels that all of a sudden the credit card companies voluntarily cap their rates.
Well, that would be in keeping with American business and how it deals with the Trump administration. And I think that happens in no small part because they're worried about being boarded by the administration, right? They could be overtaken. And
right.
The administration has done this, I think, to 14 separate companies in various ways, to various degree. Boy, if you're a publicly traded company, that's the last thing you want. So maybe you do come to heel. But, and here's where we're going to take this today. If this occurs, if 10% becomes the new cap on credit card interest rates, what happens to the credit card market? Because it's not as if he can wave a magic wand and there won't be any ramifications, right? It's not as if everybody just sees their credit card interest rate go down to 10% or less and nothing else happens. There will be lots of other things that happen. And I think the most obvious of which is going to be a bunch of people are going to have their credit cards canceled by the credit card companies.
Yeah, because fundamentally, with any price cap, you create a shortage. And if you want examples, look at rent control in New York and California, and they have a horrible time with shortage of housing, which they love to throw off onto the greedy landlords, when in fact the shortage of housing is precisely due to the fact that those places have rent caps. And so you'll do the same thing here. If you put a cap of 10%, then the credit card companies are going to look around and say, who is credit worthy to the tune of 10%?
10%.
Those people get credit cards. Everybody else doesn't. And let me tell you, because I know what the numbers are, with perfect credit score, so 850 on the thing, which something like 0.1% of people have, those people are still paying, I believe, 15 to 20% on their credit cards. You get down to the low end and you're paying 35% plus. But at 10% cap, it may be the case that nobody gets a credit card.
Yeah, I have, I'm not ashamed to say, a very high credit score. I think my credit cards are all in the neighborhood of 19%.
Yeah.
And it doesn't matter to me. I don't care. I pay it off in full every month and have for decades. Right? For me, a credit card is a way to get either cash back or airline miles.
Right. But what will happen here ultimately, if indeed this were to come to pass, and I tend to agree with you, I don't think it will, but if it were to come to pass, credit cards would likely disappear as we understand them, largely replaced by debit cards. You might have banks coming up with some creative arrangement where they give you a debit card attached to a loan account. So technically, it's the card doesn't carry the interest. You're withdrawing money from a loan account that does.
Yeah. It's interesting, right? Because really what we're talking about here is the price of an unsecured loan.
Right. Yeah.
That's what credit cards are. They're unsecured loans. And it's the bank or the credit card issuer saying, all right, Anthony, we think you're good for it, but we think a lot of people are good for it. And we end up with defaults to this degree. So we have to cover that loss. You're going to cover part of it. Everybody else is going to cover part of it. And in the end, we, the bank, will actually make money on this. And you, the customer, will have the convenience of a credit card. But there's an expense involved. And that expense is going to be filtered through the market. And you're all going to pay it.
If you want to drive this home, think about next time you're walking down the street. Just pick somebody out at random that you see, perfect stranger, and ask yourself, would you loan that guy $1,000? Would you reach in your pocket right now and give him $1,000 on his promise that he'll pay you back at some point over the course of the next months or whatever? If the answer is no, well, that's exactly what credit cards companies are facing, and yet they're managing nonetheless to create loans for people like that, for complete strangers. Why? Well, because those that do pay at the 19% level compensate for the ones who just walk away.
Yeah, they have bigger accounting departments than I have because
Right.
I wouldn't loan anybody $1,000 on their handshake promise to pay me back unless I knew that person very, very well.
Yeah.
Even then, I wouldn't give most of the people I know very, very well $1,000. But
now you might say something like, well, yeah, but you wouldn't be in a position to go after the guy for your $1,000 the bank is. To which I would reply, okay, yeah, the bank is better suited to go after the guy for the loan, but it's not worth it to the bank. It'd be worth it to me for $1,000. For the bank, it's easier just to write the thing off. And in fact, that's what they do. They pass those loans off to people who made it their job to go after people. What do you call it? Not headhunter comes to mind. That's not right. What do you call the guys that go after people?
Collection agents.
Collection agents. Right.
Right, and all of this is, of course, dischargeable in bankruptcy, so it doesn't exactly matter. Right? If you run up your credit card bills enough and you can't pay them back, you just declare that you can't pay them back, and generally speaking, you don't have to.
Yep.
And that adds to the cost of credit that all the rest of us who do pay our bills end up paying. So,
the lesson here is you cannot magically wave your hand and say, let the cost of that be 10%. Now, the cost is what it is.
And Ant, how do you know that, and this is going to make MAGA heads explode all over the country, I assume, and I'll get all the hate mail that I fully deserve for this. But how do you know that Trump is off on kind of a whack job left-wing crusade, and that's what this is. Make no mistake. This is a
this is not the kind of
thing.
policy you find at a right-leaning administration.
No, and who is the first to jump up and grab a microphone and say, yeah, we can probably help you with that? Elizabeth Warren.
Right.
That's who you're in bed with. So when the MAGA people say, well, you can tell the quality of a thing by who agrees with it. Yes, you can. Because now you've got President Trump and Elizabeth Warren on the same side, and they're both working from the Bernie Sanders playbook.
At Words and Numbers, we spend a lot of time thinking about what's going on in the economy and the government. But fundamentally, everything boils down to one thing. The greatest threat facing modern society is a lack of respect. That people who disagree somehow find it difficult, if not impossible, to discuss their differences in a civil manner. We at CiVL are interested in upgrading civilization by encouraging people to engage with new ideas and ultimately engage civilly with each other. If you agree, please join us by subscribing at CiVL.com. That's CiVL.com.